The following program is rated BOTNS for wiseacre comments, occasional insight, and brief nudity. Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to Battle of the Network shows. It's not just a podcast, it's Battle of the Network shows.
That's right.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Rick. Hello, everyone.
And this week we're going to be talking about home box office.
Yes, the earlier days of home box office.
That's right.
Maybe not the earliest days so much.
No,
we weren't
maybe
around
a little.
The
but,
beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of thought it'd be interesting to talk about HBO before it was HBO.
Right.
You know, when it was home box office, and that's really kind of what it was. What I knew it as more. I mean, knew it as HBO.
Yeah.
But really, they still use the home box office kind of name a lot. And
right.
Yeah, we were an HBO household when I was a kid, and watched it quite a lot.
We were for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
When cable first came to town, I'm wondering if I wonder if they offered a deal, like to everybody, to get them to sign up for cable. Like,
oh, I see. Like,
here's HBO and cinema. Here's some package to,
yeah,
at a cut rate.
I think that was. I think it was used as in that way for sure to get people to sign up for cable because.
Yeah.
I mean, the early days of HBO is also the early days of cable. And
right.
We kind of take it for granted now, but yeah, at the time it was kind of like, yeah, you're building a pay channel, but you're selling it to a far from universal cable universe.
Yes. Yeah. So we got cable in 1980. That's when it came to town.
Okay.
So it surprised me to learn that cable was around. I mean, in the 70s, and
mm-hmm.
I guess actually before that, even.
Yeah.
In some places, but I'm not sure when my dad got rid of it at some point, and then we got it again later, and we didn't have HBO when we got it again. But I think we had it for 3 years or something.
Yeah.
And I can remember a lot of specific things watching on there. A lot of movies, of course, mostly, but Superman and Airplane and
mm-hmm.
the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings movie.
Yeah.
Flash Gordon.
Okay.
Yeah. That was exciting. I remember talking to it because I didn't see that in the theater. So, but I had a book, one of those picture books. So I wanted to see it. Yeah,
I think a lot of those days, like in when we got cable, there wasn't a whole lot else.
Yeah.
I mean, for a while, it was just essentially a way to get good reception on all your
right.
channels.
Yeah.
And then, so we had HBO, I think, before we had, like TBS and all those other channels. They came in later. I think HBO and MTV were probably in some of the early waves, But a lot of it was just like, okay, now we use a box or whatever to get, actual good reception on more channels.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we both learned from the oral history, the tinderbox about HBO, that its first proving ground was Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Which had cable because the reception is so terrible there.
Yeah. I mean, cable was kind of a necessity. It was like a solution to a problem more than like a business idea in many ways.
Right.
It's like, okay, how do we get actual signal to people?
Yeah. And it was in the company that ended up helping start HBO was also responsible for wiring all the buildings in New York or something, or in parts of New York City. And that made sense too. Oh, yeah. It would be hard to get antenna reception in a high-rise building.
Yeah. I mean, I've, lived in apartments, and people say, oh, you can get everything over the air with a good antenna. It's like, well, no, you can't necessarily.
No.
It's tough.
Yeah, and I know that Wilkes-Barre area is bad because it's, my brother lives in Scranton area, and ever since they moved there, he's been trying to figure out how to get an antenna so he doesn't have to pay for cable. And it's just, he'd have to get some giant antenna on his roof.
Yeah.
Because, the mountains and everything's in a valley there.
Right. But, somebody came up with the idea, like, hey, let's create premium product, stuff that you can't get on regular television.
Not just somebody, a Dolan.
He was a genius.
He was a genius. That's when he came into the Time Life people with that idea. Dolan, you're a genius. Actually, it sounds like they didn't say that. They were like, well, maybe.
Yeah. It was far from a foregone conclusion in everybody's minds that this would even work.
Right.
That would technically work, and then it would work as a sustaining concept. And yeah, it it took a very long time. I mean, HBO started in 1972, but I don't think HBO is like a real big thing. It took maybe a decade, for that. It had, some highlights along the way, but it took a long time for HBO to really be taken seriously.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, even in the 80s, it seemed like there was just a sense it was the best of the pay show.
Yes.
There was like a tier from, I think because I associated Cinemax with HBO at the time. In my mind, it would have been HBO Cinemax.
Right.
Then Showtime and the movie channel.
Showtime actually began in July 1976.
Wow.
Which is way earlier than I thought.
Yeah.
I don't think Showtime was available probably until like one of those later waves of cable coming in. And, we did have Showtime for a while. I think we talked when we did the Gary Shandling episode for some specific things. But it was always like the also ran to HBO playing catch up. But I was very surprised that it was around that long. But even in 1976, HBO was still being established. I mean, a lot. I think it's kind of interesting. One interesting thing to me is like the slow build of it. It didn't even like when it first came on the air, like in that first month. So it would start like 6:30, maybe to 8, maybe 7:30, 8, and then at midnight it would be done. Mm-hmm. So you'd have this limited window of programming, and there wasn't a whole lot of it either.
Yeah, but it was that home box office concept, which I think we take for granted now, and it's not really that anymore. But you even see it, like all the just sort of the organization of the feature presentation and the this and that. Everything seemed based around that idea of creating a actual box office.
Yeah.
And it was movies or the idea was movies, sports, and like concerts.
Yeah.
Things you would go to a box office for.
Right.
Only at home.
Yeah. And yeah, back in those days when it was really a novelty and you didn't have all the other cable options.
Right.
It was a bigger deal. And probably it's funny because you think of the idea of like getting people to pay for programming. And the thing about HBO is you had to buy cable to have the right to buy HBO.
Yes.
Which is kind of like, and it's still that way, Well, I mean, it was streaming, it's a little bit different, but
yeah.
Just the whole thing of like, if you're a cable household, you've got to get, and then it became like you have to buy a special box, then you've got to get a special digital package, and then all these things you got to do and money you have to pay just to be able to pay for HBO. So you wind up with a lot of people that are very motivated to watch it and get something out of it, I guess.
Remember that brief period where you didn't have to have a box? The
Yes.
cable ready TV period?
Yeah. Right, and then they got rid of that soon enough.
Yeah,
like no, this is no good. We're going to introduce digital cable, and you have to get a addressable box so that you can order pay-per-view and that we can control everything and charge you $5 a month for the box.
Right. I believe we didn't. I mean, you created a playlist of some things to watch, and you also have a timeline of
Yes, I do.
a selective timeline of HBO history.
Yes.
And so we can talk about that a little bit and about some of these things we watched.
Yeah.
Not in great detail, but...
Okay. Well, when I start just by kind of going through this timeline I kind of assembled just for like a little bit of the history of HBO, like with a programming standpoint. So it started November 8th, 1972 in Wilkes-Barre. 300 some subscribers they had. And they started with a hockey game, Vancouver Canucks at the New York Rangers from Madison Square Garden. Because, the Dolan's Madison Square Garden, but they right away they had a contract with MSG to show all kinds of events. And then after that, a Paul Newman movie, Sometimes a Great Notion. And that first month, this was taken like in I saw like a website that reproduced or that summarized kind of a promotional document that HBO prepared for its 10th anniversary, and they actually named like some of the so the movies they had that first month were Sometimes a Great Notion, Play Misty for Me, The Railway Children, Red Sky at Morning, and The Andromeda Strain. And in addition to that, they had 9 NBA games and 5 NHL games, and all those ones were live. So that was kind of like what they had at the beginning.
And of course, in 1972, the NBA wasn't very respected.
No.
I don't know if the NHL was either.
Yeah, it wasn't a huge like property,
Yeah.
like they were now. They're more like kind of marginal. And there's some weird thing that like because of there was some regulation that HBO was only allowed to show movies like from a certain time period. So not only could they not show something that was like just out of theaters because the studios wouldn't want that anyway, but they couldn't show anything back from like I think it was like 2 or 3 years. And I think it was to protect like sales of like older movies to local TV stations and stuff like that. Yeah. So there was like a specific window that they had, and again, this is before like home video too. So that's kind of limited their movie selection at first too. Although they would make deals with all like different studios at the time.
And also there was some rule, like even though Chuck Dolan's company Sterling, which was also partly owned by Time Life. So right, Time Life was involved from the beginning. Even though they had wired these buildings in New York, there was some prohibition against pay services in New York. So that's why they couldn't debut it there.
Yeah. Yeah, there are all these weird like regulations and stuff when you get into this. Like I said, it was far from a foregone conclusion. A lot of work did go into building this up. On January 22nd, 1973, George Foreman beat Joe Frazier, in 2 rounds, and that was the first HBO boxing event. That would start like a tradition of boxing, which worked well. I think that Tinderbox book kind of gets into that. It worked well as an event. I mean, it was alive. It was kind of like just multiple things about it made it work well for HBO, and they kind of hitched their wagon to boxing early on and became established as a place for
now.
events.
Is that the fight, the famous Down Goes Frazier call, or is that from an Ali Frazier fight?
Foreman goes Frazier. I'm getting mixed up now. I think that's later.
Okay.
But Ali Frazier will come out later. First, in March of 1973, from Allentown, Pennsylvania, the first non-sports entertainment special, the Pennsylvania Polka Festival. And unfortunately, very little survives of this in many of these HBO events.
It's funny, I mean, the way, in Tinderbox, the way he addresses that. Like, he seems very like, well, why? It just seems even more absurd to him than I think it does to us. I mean, given the fact that Pennsylvania was one of their big markets, it kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they still show that stuff on TV in Scranton, I think.
Yeah. On
their, like, PBS station, but...
I mean, it was available, and probably they wanted something relatively low stakes, too.
Yeah.
In case something went wrong.
Right, yeah. And apparently they erased the tape. But, like, in the playlist, you have the one, like, random clip, which is I don't know what's going on with that clip.
Yeah.
Because there's other stuff in it.
Yeah, yeah.
There's some naked ladies at some point. I don't know what else. I can't remember. That stood out, obviously. Was not from the polka competition.
No. Pennsylvania Polka Festival, so, get a little music. And then as we go, like, moving into January now, according to my notes, I don't have any specific examples, but the programming started expanding really in January of 1974. It included, like, concerts and kid shows, which, again, that seems pretty early. And they have a very low subscriber base, not a lot going on. Summer 1974 is when they really entered New York City, which is kind of a big milestone. July 1975, their first Wimbledon coverage. Now, I guess what they were actually doing, they were kind of retransmitting stuff from like the BBC or like UK feeds. So it wasn't for another couple of years until it was a couple of years later where they actually sent a whole crew over and started doing their own match and stuff. But that was still a big milestone because Wimbledon was like a big part of them for like 25 years or something like that.
Right. And they were like bringing tapes back on the Concorde.
Yeah.
So they covered all the sort of early rounds.
Yes. Right? Yeah. I think NBC, even at that time, had the rights to like the semifinals and the finals, but they could do like the early round coverage. And that would kind of go on like that for years. September 1975 was the Thrilla in Manila. HBO carried it by satellite live from the Philippines. Ali beat Frazier in that one, and that was kind of a big milestone because using satellites, they expanded both the reach and the kinds of programming they could do, like live events and stuff. So that was a big deal. Here's one for you, Mike. December 31st, 1975, the first comedy special, An Evening with, not George Carlin, Robert Klein.
Oh, yes, of course.
So, he's a big figure. I mean,
he is.
George Carlin is maybe the one that's, to be honest, is probably the most associated with HBO, but Robert Klein was really the pioneer.
For decades.
Yes. And one of the clips in the playlist, it was like an on-location like comedy special. And it was basically like 15 minutes of like a summary of comedians.
Right.
And Robert Klein hosted it.
Right. That was really bizarre. Because so many of them were, and I think because it was a partial clip, they didn't identify them.
Yes.
And so I didn't know who some of them were, but a lot of them were not people you would call the cutting edge of comedy.
Certainly not. I mean, you'd think later on, HBO would be associated with like Chris Rock and Robin Williams and Richard Pryor, but this was like
Carlin, and this was like
Myron
Henny
Cohen,
Youngman,
Norm Crosby, Phyllis Diller, Joey Bishop, Shelley Berman.
Right? Like David Brenner was the youngest person.
Yes,
in that particular series.
That's right. And this is in 1983. This clip that we put in the playlist, and they did a tribute at the end of Freddie Prinze, so we talked about, and Toady Fields.
Right. Yeah.
That was kind of
out
there, wasn't it?
I didn't know what to make of that either because they kept cutting to Florence Henderson in the audience laugh.
Yeah, and Toadie Fields was like one of the dirtiest performers in that clip.
Yeah.
I think she was, more R-rated than Red Fox.
I know.
But yeah, so comedy became like a really huge part, and they would have not just they have the concerts, but they had On Location, which is kind of like one of their banners, and that premiered in March 1976. And you know who the first official On Location act was? Another favorite of you and I, Mr. David Steinberg.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I just remember those being a big deal, and they, just like the On Location, and it kind of stood out as kind of a thing.
Steve Martin did a lot of stuff for them too, right?
Yeah, there were a lot of Steve Martin and Steve Martin. One day we want to talk, do one of those Steve Martin specials because he did network TV stuff on HBO and comedy albums. I mean, man, he was huge. June 1976 was the fabulous Bette Midler show. It's like a big milestone. I think they talk about that a lot in the Tinderbox book.
Yeah.
April 1977 was Standing Room Only, which is kind of another kind of on-location thing. But the premiere of that was Ann Corio's This Was Burlesque.
Okay.
So, yeah, that kind of came out of, I think, the success of the Bette Midler was like a series to do more than just like stand-up comedy kind of specials. So the George Carlin at USC was his first comedy special. That was September 1977, first one on HBO. Also premiering in September 1977 was HBO's first weekly show. And do you want to guess what that was? It was on a long time.
Inside the NFL.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. So, again, kind of getting a little bit more into sports a little bit. 1978, I had to put this in, Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, one of my favorites, and something we watched on HBO every year that they had it, for sure. September, wait a minute. I thought this is a couple of things here interesting. 1980, I believe, was the first time they used the video jukebox branding.
Okay.
So they would have like interstitial programming, like a lot of shorts, and we see some of that in the playlist.
Yeah.
Like cartoons and music videos. A lot of the clips you'll see, they cut out the videos.
Yeah.
Because they'll get copyright strikes otherwise. But in 1980, I think was when they first started to use the HBO video jukebox.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, see, I remember that a lot, like well into the 80s. But a lot of times it might be you'd have to be sitting and watching in between programs to catch it too.
Right.
Because a lot of times it would just be they just play like one video and then they'd be done.
Yeah.
And move on to something else.
I think I sort of remember the little cartoons or kids oriented things more.
Yeah, and a lot of times they'd be like totally random things, or they'd be some Canadian production, and it's like, what did they get? I guess it would be cheap if they could acquire, but it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
It was a lot more. That's kind of the charm of it, though. I think it was more experimental. You could have stuff like during the middle of the day, there'd just be just some random nature film, like a lot of quiet stuff, like playing for 10 minutes that you would never see on one of these channels now, but they would do it then. And just the idea of showing video, just random music videos as filler.
Right.
That's kind of, it seems a little low rent now, but again, that's kind of the charm of it. Now, it's easy for me to say that's the charm of it because I wasn't paying, whatever a month for it. I was just watching it, but still it was something, and MTV wasn't a big thing yet. Other people weren't doing that, so
right.
Another way to distinguish themselves, I guess. Yes. Oh, in December 1978 is when they really achieved like full nationwide distribution, like everybody was eligible, kind of to get them. September 1982 was the pilot for Not Necessarily the News, which we'll talk about in a minute. I think January 1983, the debut of Fraggle Rock. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead for a minute because I want to mention May 1983 was the Terry Fox story, the first TV movie. And I didn't know this, but I read that it wasn't actually the first one produced. There was another one called Right of Way that I think had Jimmy Stewart and Betty Davis, but it was about, I think, assisted suicide or something. And they thought it was like too grim to be their first. So Terry Fox story about an amputee Canadian long distance runner, and then I remember that being on a lot. That was kind of a big deal at the time. So let me go back a couple months here. February 1st, 1983. This was a huge deal. And I remember this being a huge deal at the time. HBO premiered Star Wars.
That's why I think we didn't have it by 1983. Because I know I didn't see it on there.
The funny thing that I totally forgot about until I was doing the research is that it wasn't exclusive. Like, I think Showtime had it and like other pay services had it too. But HBO, they're the ones that I remember having it. And then I think like a year later, shortly after that, it was on CBS.
Yeah, that's what I remember. And that was a big deal.
Yeah, I remember being on HBO. And I think what they did was I think that they did a little, with Star Wars, they did a little sneaky thing. They premiered it like at midnight or something like that. So they had it like an embargo, and they played it like the earliest moment they could as like an unadvertised thing to like. So they were technically the first ones to do it.
You have the playlist you made it was a little frustrating. A little clip of the the HBO introduction to that. Mm-hmm. But then it plays the 20th Century Fox song and shows the Lucasfilm logo and shows a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then fades. Like,
yeah.
Gets you juiced up to watch Star Wars.
Now, I also watched like the CBS premiere. Somebody's put like the beginning of the CBS with like Mark Hamill, the CBS, I think, where Mark Hamill was talking about like the history of it, and it's really cool. Around the same time, like right after Jedi and stuff. But yeah, I do remember that being a big deal, and like thinking, okay, this was kind of like for me as a kid, it's like, okay, HBO this is like a big deal now.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes a great notion, with all due respect, is not the kind of thing that's going to interest young me, but Star Wars is like, okay, blockbuster movies and stuff, not just, kind of like, it would have a reputation of like, maybe like Kramer versus Kramer or something like that would be on a lot,
Yeah.
But Star Wars was like a bigger deal. And also, I should mention, I haven't been mentioning the music, but February 1982 is Simon & Garfunkel, the concert in Central Park.
That's pretty huge.
I had no interest in that, but I remember it being like a big thing.
Yeah.
They had some other big concerts like Diana Ross and stuff like that, but I think the Simon & Garfunkel is one of their big musical things in these days. November 23rd, 1983, the premiere of The Hitchhiker. Uh-huh. This is like I think there's some maybe Canadian co-production, but nudity.
Yeah.
It was an anthology series that I think was famous kind of for showing nudity and having bad language and violence and stuff like that. But one of their first original shows.
It didn't, like USA showed repeats of that or something.
The Hitchhiker.
Yeah.
Edited version.
Yeah.
And there's some other things too that were like that, like Ray Bradbury Theater would show up like in other versions. I guess they kind of spread the cost around a little bit, but maybe premiere on pay cable. And speaking of gratuitous nudity, First and 10, which I think was their first regular comedy series, premiered December 1984. That had Delta Burke, O.J. Simpson, and kind of a comedy about the NFL. It wasn't officially the NFL. It was a fictional California Bulls, but I think the idea was because they didn't have they had inside the NFL, but they could afford to poke fun at pro football. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of that theme in Tinderbox is HBO being able to do certain kinds of programming because they weren't business partners with full business partners with like the NFL and Major League Baseball. They could do later stuff like Real Sports and documentaries, things like that. Two more things I want to mention that I think are big deals as December 24th, 1985, and this was really cool, is Ghostbusters. There was a big thing where it was reported that they may have paid as much as like $40 million for the rights to show this because it's kind of confusing, and they get into this in the book, and it's still really not clear, but there was some kind of like, there were escalator clauses for the movies they would acquire based on how well they did at the box office. But I guess there wasn't a limit on what it was, and people were criticizing later, kind of after the fact, like, hey, you idiot, now we paid all this money for one movie, but I don't know. I remember it being a big deal, and one of the big deals about it was they premiered it December 24th, 1985, like as a Christmas present. They showed it at 11:30 p.m., and it was a surprise. So they put it, there's a Mental Floss article that shows, kind of talks about this. I think it was like Christmas present was in the TV listings, 11:30, and it turned out it was Ghostbusters. And I remember I don't think that we watched it, but I remember there being buzz about it that like, hey, did you hear HBO actually showed Ghostbusters? And they showed it again later.
Of course.
But it was like a thing, and that became like a thing like, oh, okay, is there going to be like a Christmas present? Is there going to be some kind of special sneak preview, I think they would call it, like after that. But Ghostbusters was huge, and that was one of the biggest movies of all time in that era. So
yeah.
That was a big deal. And finally, in this timeline, because I think this is the end of the early HBO, Comic Relief aired in 1986. And to me, once they started, Comic Relief is kind of like a convenient timeline. Like the branding is different. HBO is just, they're getting into more different kind of things, expanding the TV movies, and some of that charm is gone. And to me, that's where I end the early years of HBO is with Comic Relief, which was a huge deal. Billy Crystal, Robin Williams, Whoopi Goldberg, raising money for charity, star-studded event, a big gala. And again, a big event and sort of manufactured, I don't mean that in a negative way, but sort of created especially for, with HBO in mind and everything.
Right,
and something that they owned and ran. So there you go.
That's a pretty good timeline, though.
Thank you. Did I miss any big?
Oh, I'm sure. The first appearance of Dick Cavett on HBO.
Well, somebody I didn't mention in there was Rich Little.
Oh.
He was one of the big stars of HBO.
Right.
The Rich Little Christmas Carol would be on like every year, it seemed like.
Which I watched last Christmas.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be watching it this.
No, it's not like I just watched it myself either last Christmas or the Christmas before. Yeah. And it's not the perennial that Emmett Otter is for me. I'll just say.
And that you have a playlist, a brief snippet of Rich Little's Robin Hood.
Yeah, I didn't remember that one at all.
Oh, man. It didn't even make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, so in these things, he plays most of the roles. Mm-hmm. Of course, as you know, doing his impressions. And I don't know. Like, so Humphrey Bogart is Prince John. That doesn't seem correct. What? Laurel and Hardy are both the Sheriff of Nottingham. Inspector Clouseau is there. Not a great Inspector Clouseau impression. Carol Channing, and that is a good impression, I think, of his Maid Marian.
I mean, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And Groucho is Robin Hood.
Yeah.
And it's not a good Groucho.
No.
I mean, there are impressions he does that are good impressions.
Yeah.
The Groucho's just isn't.
Yeah, it's like if you're gonna force certain impressions to get them in there, you should go with your best ones.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he did that in that one.
Right. And I don't know. I just don't understand those choices.
Yeah. The Christmas Carol one is
pretty
much
good.
more inspired.
Yeah.
I mean, with like W.C. Fields, in as far as like matching
Right.
people to, I mean, that was a little bit better, I think.
Yeah. And maybe it's just given our other experience of Robin Hood parodies. Maybe Robin Hood parodies just don't work.
Yes, when things were rotten,
Yeah.
you're referring to in our Forgotten Sitcoms episode.
Because there's nothing really funny in the 10 minutes of that clip.
Yeah. And Robin Hood Men in Tights has its fans, but it's far from Mel Brooks's
Right,
best
yeah.
work.
Yeah.
I think we could agree on that. Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I haven't seen that, so I'm trying not to pass judgment on it. But
yeah, also in the playlist, let me just give a shout out to my friend Jesus for showing me this video, which I'd never seen until very recently, about the making of the iconic HBO from Space
yeah.
feature presentation intro, which is awesome.
I don't really remember the city part of it, where they're traveling through the city, which is the most interesting part of the little short documentary. You know, they made this model city and all that. I remember the logo and, you know, the metal logo in space.
I think maybe they rolled out the longer one for really special occasions, you know.
I remember the music.
Yeah.
Of course. They might still use that music.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's great. I mean, it really, there's a majesty to it, and it makes you think that something important is going to happen.
Yeah.
It was perfect. That intro and music was perfect for like a Ghostbusters or a Star Wars or something like that. That made you think that it was a big deal and gave you that kind of the home box office feeling.
Or Some Came Running. Wait, no, is that what it's called?
Sometimes a Great
Sometimes
Notion.
a Great Notion, yes.
Yeah, so, you know, so that was really cool too. But so for me as a kid, I guess I was watching all this stuff, but yeah, I don't remember really like some of these big events and like Fraggle Rock I remember and things and some of the comedy and stuff and some stuff I probably shouldn't have been watching maybe, but
Yeah.
To me, like the big movies stand out, but I don't remember just sitting down and watching whole movies all the time. But I remember them being on. Mm-hmm. You know, like Airplane.
Yeah.
9 to 5.
Yeah. Yep.
That was on all the time.
Yeah. The Frisco Kid was on a lot.
Yeah, you know, I never caught that one.
I caught it because Harrison Ford. You gotta watch. I don't think I ever got through it all. And I think maybe The Little Prince, but that might have been a different channel.
Okay, yeah, I don't.
Also, Gene Wilder's in that. But,
Okay, yeah. I never saw that one. The Incredible Shrinking Woman with Lily Tomlin on all the time.
we watched that as a family.
Yeah, these were ones that I remember just being on, like the more PG ones that would be on during the day.
Yeah.
You know, too. So that's why I would remember them. At least one or two Chevy Chase, Goldie Hawn movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure Foul Play, Modern Problems. I mean, they had, and there wasn't like it wasn't as divided with like studios. So of course they would get Warner Brothers movies, although they had to pay for them, and those negotiations would get contentious. But they had like a lot of Columbia studios, so they had stuff like that at the time too. And, And Superman, the Superman movies would go on there. So yeah, there's a lot of that. But for me, like I more fondly remember stuff like Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, or maybe watching a little bit of Wimbledon, or Inside the NFL was a little, you know, I'd check in with that every now and then.
Yeah, I definitely remember at least seeing some of that because of the NFL films. Or did they show those other places too?
I think
with the narration and the...
Yeah, they would have those in other packages, but that was really the place to see the NFL films. That was like the big deal of it, with the John Facenda narration and those clips, and in like 3 or 4 minutes devoted to like a specific game. That was like a real novelty back then, because you wouldn't get that. Maybe your local team, and even Monday Night Football would show, it was famous for showing highlights, but they'd only be like one package, and Howard Cosell would be narrating it, not John Facenda.
Yeah,
and you'd only get like snippets of each game.
Yeah. So what else should we do?
Well,
some of these things in this playlist.
Yeah, because there's some other programming that I do remember being on a lot.
Yeah.
And then there was a couple in particular that I thought we could mention. Like, how about we start, not necessarily the news. Mm-hmm. Watched a little bit of that, and I remember that being on a lot. And I think that was probably more on later as a kid. I didn't watch that a whole lot as a kid, but I was aware of it.
Yeah, I just remember being aware of it.
Yeah, and I think that actually holds up a lot better than I thought it did. Thought it would, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of very short things that maybe didn't entirely appeal to me, but, it's a likable cast, and I think the Rich Hall stuff is the best.
The Sniglets.
Sniglets, I don't like that word sniglet, but anything, like in the pilot, he does a thing, that video game bit. Mm-hmm. It just seemed more, I think because he has a little more breathing room than the things where they're dubbing in audio and stuff like that.
Right.
They just seem a little more well-conceived. But it's fun, and it's fun seeing Stuart Pankin doing a fake commercial years before he would start doing real commercial.
Yeah.
Always fun to see Mitchell Lawrence, of course.
Yes, Mitchell Lawrence.
Before he became the king of billiards.
Yeah, they had a good cast, and the one thing that kind of surprised me watching episodes now is like the one thing that jumped out to me that they did. I guess it was based on like the not the 9 o'clock news format that was used in England, but the one thing that stood out to me is like, okay, what do they do a lot of is taking clips and like editing them to give them different meanings.
Yeah.
So you have like Reagan at a press conference, and then they'd ask like questions, and they'd make his answers seem ridiculous.
Right.
By that kind of thing, and there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to that too, just like regular, like very quick, like you said, sketches and stuff, like based on single gags and stuff. But I didn't realize that there was so much more of that there was a lot more of that than I thought compared to the other stuff.
Actually, my favorite one of those was one not from the 80s. It was in the anniversary special. There was one where they cut between two live crew performing, and
yes.
like the bushes watching.
Yes. That's very good.
Yeah.
I gotta admit, I went in kind of thinking, I wasn't gonna like, but actually, I love those. Those segments were very clever. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of it is like more timely. Like I think the one opens with like James Watt,
who
was like the Secretary of Interior,
right? Yeah,
and he was notorious at the for getting fired for making rude comments and everything. But he's not really well known 40 years later.
Yes, and for banning the Beach Boys.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, but. Like in the early 80s, like every comedian knew him.
Yeah.
He was very well known.
Right, and he was just like, was he the head of the EPA or something?
Yeah, he was in the cabinet, I think.
Yeah, but not like.
He was.
He was too big for his britches.
Yes. Yeah, and there was like one sketch I was they had a presidential awards sketch with Mitchell Lawrence.
Yeah.
And I think it was Annie Bloom, one of the female, but. It was a running bit where they're goofing on Nixon, but they're using old footage or whatever, and Stuart Pankin keeps, accepting for Nixon. It was just kind of funny to think of, like the episode we're talking about. There's a couple episodes I put in there, but there's an episode from October of 1983.
Yeah.
So in 1983, Nixon was still very fertile ground for comedy.
Right.
So it wasn't all like right at the moment. It was like, okay, there's Nixon at that point was kind of a timeless comedy figure, I guess.
Yeah, and certainly Reagan.
Yes. And the way I recall, like every episode had a lot of Reagan.
Yeah.
I mean, just like tons of Reagan stuff. But in that episode, there's also stuff about Jeannie Kirkpatrick.
Right.
It was like Secretary of the UN, Jean Kirkpatrick.
Yeah.
And just all kinds of stuff. So like commercial parodies and things like that.
Yeah, Stuart Pankin. What is it? Mr. T store or is
Mr.
it?
T Emporium.
Mr. T Emporium. Yeah. They got all sorts of things. Everything is a mohawk and a beard.
Yeah, like the TVs.
Yes. And he's dressed as Mr. T.
Yeah. And it's pretty funny. And they would also do like desk segments, but it wouldn't be like Weekend Update. They'd cut in and like do special reports and stuff. There was a gag about like pudding, but it was like they were showing like footage of some horrible natural disaster.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't like a real, it was like groans.
Yeah.
They must have put that in, but I was thinking, boy, that's pretty tasteless because I think it was footage of some
like a big
relatively recent
mudslide or something.
flood. Yeah,
yeah.
And they were like, kind of using as like a pudding factory exploded or whatever. It's like, that was a little too much or something like that. So there's a couple like that, but if you don't like something, it's very fast moving.
Yes,
it's like a half-hour show, so it moves.
You also had the pilot, which had some different cast members. Like I like Sam McMurray, who I recognize from Raising Arizona.
Yeah,
and other things.
Tracy Ullman show.
Yeah. And there was another guy, I forget his name. I think must have been a stand-up mostly, but I kind of liked his presence.
Yeah, and wait, was Stuart Pankin was in the pilot?
No.
He was not in the pilot.
Yeah, there was somebody in the overweight. You know, not huge, but and there was like a newsreader guy who kept getting news bulletins in weird situations like funerals, and that was a little tasteless too. The ET.
Oh yeah.
DT, the shaky terrestrial. Oh yeah, Tommy Koenig.
Okay.
Koenig.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Rich Hall wasn't in it, and Ann Bloom was in it, and Audrey Neenan.
Yeah, she was in the October one too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
There's some talent there and some good stuff, and I don't know how many episodes, maybe like 6 a year, something like that.
Something, it's like
6 to 8 a year, maybe.
73 episodes over 8 years.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's more like 9 a year.
Yeah, the first season has 13. The final season has 5. No, that's the 5th season. Sorry.
Yeah, and I don't recall, I mean...
Yeah, I think they're once a month or something, right?
That might be, yeah, that might be about right. But I don't remember it being like on a specific day either.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that was kind of the thing about early HBO too. Before they established like Sunday night and even Saturday night movies, I think premieres, I think they had that pretty early. But it would just, stuff would just show up, or maybe you'd get it, you know, you'd get some inkling ahead. They have ways of getting information out ahead of time sometimes. But it wouldn't be like, okay, every Monday at 8 p.m. there's going to be not necessarily the news, and they'll show a rerun next week or whatever. So it was a lot more sporadic. That was the other thing about HBO is, you know, when stuff would be on, you know, and they repeating it and showing it in different blocks, but it was just a different way of programming a station.
Yeah. Well, and of course, one way they had it getting out was the program guide. Loved the program guide.
Yeah, you like the program
Just
guide.
looking through it. I mean, just like TV Guide. Flipping through it, reading about the movies.
But you get a month ahead, though, with
Yeah.
HBO. No, TV Guide only gave you a week ahead.
Like, oh, Superman's on all of these times.
Yeah.
And getting to learn out, you know, does it have adult language?
Yeah.
Does it have nudity? Does it have partial nudity?
Yeah.
Violence?
Sexual situations.
Sexual situation. Yeah. Get all of that. It's fun and very compact, of course.
Yeah.
And I guess free.
Yeah, included with your subscription. I think. Yeah, that's right.
I like that. Yeah, there was a clip in there that just explained how to read it.
Yeah, in case it was too complex. And I think that'd be another thing is if you'd go to your cable office, because you'd have reason to, because you'd have to like turn in equipment or get equipment.
Yeah.
They would always have those like programming guides sitting around, you know.
Right.
You could just like peruse them while you were there.
Like even the previous place I lived for a while, the cable was the apartment building was like almost like hotel cable. And HBO was part of it, just included. So everybody had cable, and it was, and they would have those in the office, the rental office, like in the 2000s. It was cool.
Yeah, you know, and that's another thing. The whole notion of free HBO.
Yeah.
Like see it on a motel sign.
Right. Yeah.
They would offer cable TV and free HBO. Like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was something worth advertising back then.
And every time it'd be something stupid.
Yeah. And if you were lucky, though, that hotel or motel would have a copy of the latest issue of the program guide on the TV. So
That's
you could,
right.
like, flick through it and see what would be on.
Yep.
Because you wouldn't have on-screen programming at the time. So yeah, that was cool.
And what's another way you could learn about it?
Well, this is something I totally forgot about.
Yeah.
There was an actual TV show
Yeah.
called HBO Magazine.
Hosted by Dick Cavett.
Yes, the face of HBO.
Yeah. This was one of my favorite things you had in there. It was my favorite thing.
Yeah. And before we get, I just want to say this is worth watching because you get a sense of like what you really get a sense of what was on HBO like in 83 or 82 and how HBO promoted itself, what it thought would appeal to people.
Yeah.
And again, just kind of that much lower key presentation of everything.
Yeah. And Dick Cavett.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Talk about low key.
Yeah.
So it's nicely organized. Get the movies. I think it starts with music, actually.
Yeah, I think because they had a very special guest.
Yes. And then you get the movies, and then you get the sports, and maybe some other. So, yeah, they do have special guests, Olivia Newton-John. A charming interview.
Yes.
It's funny. They show a clip of her performing Heart Attack, is it what it's called?
Yeah.
You know, and she's in the spandex and everything. This is the physical era. And then she's in this interview, and she's in a sweater, a big flowing skirt, and she and Dick Cavett dance, which is weird.
Yeah.
Like, suddenly I'm like, he was probably going to Studio 54 and stuff, learning those moves.
Yeah.
Weird. So this is from it's from January '83, and the first time I kind of rewatched parts of it quickly to get this list, but I thought like all these things were premiering in the same month, but this is like stuff that's coming in the year, musical thing, concerts. Fleetwood Mac, Hall & Oates, Sheena Easton, Air Supply, Pat Benatar, Blondie, and Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah, that's a heck of a lineup for
It
early
is.
1983. There's
Yeah.
huge acts. And I didn't remember hardly any of that being on HBO, honestly.
I don't know if I'd want to watch any of them.
Yeah. At
Now?
the time, Hall & Oates I would have been really into. But
Yeah.
I don't remember them necessarily. But like music was not something like I wouldn't sit down and watch a whole like concert special on HBO.
Yeah.
And Olivia Newton-John, this is peak Olivia Newton-John
of
right
course.
here.
Yeah, I don't think that clip is the best selling point.
Yeah.
Just because she keeps giving me a heart attack like
Yeah.
5 times or something.
Right. No,
And the Fleetwood Mac clip is pretty rough if you're not a Stevie Nicks fan.
yeah.
I don't even know if those clips are from the shows that are going to premiere or what, but that music aspect of HBO, which every now and then they'll do something now, but it really kind of stands out to me as something that they had big stuff on there.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that we might not be into the Simon and Garfunkel thing, but that was a huge deal. And I mean, just the staging of it and everything, and I think it was a huge deal for them to figure out the logistics of it.
Yeah, no, this is
I
just...
think Lorne Michaels was involved.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yes.
His buddy Paul.
This is just me speculating, but it seems to me that like there was more regular music concert programming in the 80s, and then as MTV got big,
Yeah.
and the video era came in, they sort of de-emphasized that in favor of like more one-offs and big events like Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston. But at this time, it was like a regular thing. You just rattled off like a bunch of things people could look forward to, and then I think they got away from that as the decade went on.
And I remember when we had it one summer, my older cousin came down for part of the summer to babysit us while my mom took classes, and like watching Barry Manilow's concert.
Oh,
She
yeah.
was a Barry Manilow fan.
Yeah.
I don't remember much about it, but other than it was very, they had a lot going on. It wasn't just him singing it. There was, dancers and stuff.
Right, very theatrical.
Yeah, that's fun. And then they go through the movies with this sort of theme of you can live different lives and stuff. Although a lot of them are not lives that I particularly want.
Yeah.
They start. I mean, they hinted at. I mean, they show Superman, but then they save it for the last, even though it's there. But so Neighbors, the Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi. I almost said Jim Belushi.
Yeah.
John Belushi movie. This movie I've never heard of called Rollover, about like business with Chris Christopherson and Jane Fonda.
Yeah, that was a new one to me too.
Pennies from Heaven, the Steve Martin, Bernadette Peters one, and poor Pennies from Heaven. 'Cause even the cavity was in. Some call it ahead of its time. Like, oh
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah, I think Neighbors was like a notorious flop too.
Yeah.
That was one where Aykroyd and Belushi like sort of played against type.
Right.
And again, it's kind of maybe a cult hit, but it's not a huge thing. You definitely have to put some spin on some of these.
Yeah. Something called Four Friends from the writer of Breaking Away.
Ah, yes. Again, this is
No idea
this is
what that-
not one I remembered at all.
It looked like kind of a nostalgia movie. And then I've seen this movie. He portrays it as a sort of romantic epic, Gallipoli.
Ah,
This is like a really kind of tragic World War I movie
yeah.
with a young Mel Gibson about Australians fighting and dying pretty much
Right.
in World War I. And then Superman 2.
Yeah.
That's the big one. That's an interesting lineup, but
Yeah. And it does offer like variety, I guess, across the line. But I think that probably.
and of course, I mean, those are the premieres. There were other movies
Yeah.
surely running around there.
Right.
All those things you mentioned.
Yeah.
And then there's the sports segment, which I know you enjoyed with his co-host Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yes, one of his retirements. I guess at the time he was not active. He would soon return to the ring. But yes, this is Sugar Ray was a huge star, especially like I guess in the late '70s and right after like the Olympics and stuff. But at this time, yeah, he was a really big deal and became like one of the faces of HBO Sports for a while too.
Yeah, and they have a little fun comparing their heights.
Yeah.
And then Sugar Ray takes over, and the big thing is the history of pro football.
Yeah, it seemed like a good documentary. I don't remember watching that, but it sounds interesting. And that's the thing. Like a lot of these like sports documentaries and documentaries in general, you might think, well, 40 years ago, it's outdated. But there's also like really good footage in a lot of these that you don't see anymore, or that isn't available anymore. So I like watching some of these old documentaries, and I'm gonna try to look for that one.
And then you already mentioned it, but the premiere of Fraggle Rock.
Mm-hmm.
And the premiere of not necessarily in the news. They had a new George Carlin special, which he spent some time sitting in the technical the booth of a TV studio talking about it. Oh, and then the viewer mail, that was fun too.
Yeah, I really liked the viewer mail segment was great.
Yes.
I mean, just to take the time to address the like very specific questions about HBO and like kind of explain what's going on.
Right, and totally not take responsibility for anything. Sort of. I mean, because the first one is about like, I don't like turning on my TV and seeing this whatever bad language or violent, whatever particular thing they're complaining about like that. And he's like, well, we do give warnings before movies and in the program guide.
So the following presentation is rated R.
Right.
Some material may not be suitable for younger viewers.
So it's really your responsibility to figure that out. And then one about reception. And he's like, well, that's something to take up with your local cable company.
Yeah. It's cool that they address these things though. They're probably like real letters too.
Right. Yeah.
I think the viewer mail was the mailbag. That was my favorite.
Yeah.
Favorite part of that show. I think. I don't know how often they did these though. HBO Magazine.
It seems like maybe once a month.
Yeah,
that's the impression I get.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I wish there were more of them.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't think I've found any more examples of it, but that's intact. A full episode like that. But it's really cool.
I wish they still did that.
Yeah.
Instead of just a sizzle reel.
Yeah.
And they still had Dick Cavett hosting it.
Yes.
This month, go to Westeros.
Yeah. and it speaks pretty well of Dick Cavett that he's able to, answer viewer letters, interview Olivia Newton-John, interact with Sugar Ray all in the same episode.
Yeah.
He was a talented guy.
He was.
And I think at this time he was doing a show on PBS as well, one of his many different talk shows. I think he was on PBS about that time, so it was not exclusive to HBO,
right?
But he was on HBO a lot.
That's right. Did he do any other like a talk show on there too? I guess not if he had PBS. But.
Yeah, I don't think he did a talk show on HBO, but he would host like specials in like the HBO magazine. And can we talk about those documentaries? So it started out with like something called Time Was, and that was decades based. Then they had Remember When, which was similar, and then Yesteryear, so it's an episode of 1942, which I think is chopped off a little bit. But I guess one of the big features, it was relatively low cost because they take like a lot of old newsreel and public domain footage.
Yeah.
And every now and then they'd use a green screen and put Dick Cavett like in the middle of it. And that was like the big gimmick.
Yeah.
So that was like common to all those. But so Yesteryear, they had episodes focused on a specific year, and they'd be like about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour or so. And yeah, kind of very... Not what you'd necessarily think of as HBO.
No.
Now, but I remember this stuff being on all the time. I mean, they had this, and like they had a Consumer Reports show at the time, and they'd have again kind of more lower key kind of documentary type programming.
Yeah, and it's interesting just to get. I mean, because obviously 1942 is a pretty interesting year. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of fun going on, although they do talk about the entertainment world, but really the U.S. entering World War II, all of that, and the
mobilization,
the build up,
for it.
Yeah, and then the one of the instances where they insert him into reality is really ill-conceived.
Yes,
because it's a very good interview.
Yes,
he's talking to someone who survived the Bataan Death March in the Philippines, but they have him emerge from a photograph of the march in an army uniform.
Yeah.
And then the veteran show up. There's also like a Japanese soldier that they sort of animate his arm.
Yeah.
Telling them to move along.
Yes.
And then they have this very serious conversation that's fascinating.
Right.
And it's just, and it's all in black and white. And it's just like, what? You're just distracting me with this gimmick so much.
Yes. From
something that I would gladly listen to more about.
They would have been better off just doing this in a studio.
Yeah.
With maybe that picture as a backdrop.
Right.
But it was odd to begin with, and then when they did the interview, I was like, oh, this is kind of in poor taste. I mean, Dick Cavett, and even a couple, like, he asked him about, like, torture, and it's just kind of weird the way he asked him that, too, but the guy was very good.
Yeah.
And had got across the gravity of the situation, but just seemed like kind of a normal guy. And I don't know, I was impressed with him. You're right, it was a good interview, but the gimmick was not necessary there. That was ill advised for sure. It was interesting. I mean, a lot of it, especially in this one. I mean, it's 1942, so a lot of the footage is going to be old, like newsreel footage and stuff. But it's well put together, and Dick Cavett's narration is very good. It focuses on the war, but it talks about like entertainment and kind of the movies and. There's a few lighter moments. He kind of pokes fun at the Zoot Suit,
Yeah.
And the Jitterbug. Of course, that comes right after talking about the Coconut Grove fire,
Right.
which killed like hundreds of people. I think it was pretty well produced. And there's some real. To me, there's some real poignancy to it too. Like the fact that it's not as frenetic and it is slower paced. The fact that they can have that conversation with the guy, and like they talk about the irony of like the most popular song, White Christmas, and they just kind of like have some footage of like soldiers, and they kind of talk about in the home front it was kind of ironic too, and they just kind of let the song play a little bit, and I thought that was well done. So yeah, I enjoy this, and kind of thing again. It's kind of, if not for people uploading them to YouTube and places like that, it would really be kind of lost to the ages. There's not really much of a market for this stuff, but I enjoy it.
At this point in the recording, Mike's audio dropped out for a good portion. But using the magic of audio chroma key, future Mike has dropped himself right back into the conversation.
And speaking of that, can we talk about the other big documentary in the list? This is one for years. I thought of this because it was on all the time, and parts of it kind of scared me as a kid a little bit. And when I first actually dove into YouTube, as far as like, okay, YouTube's got old stuff on it, this is one of the things I sought out. Some call them freaks from 1981, and this is one I remember they played all the time, and they played it I think pretty much at all day parts, so it was on a lot during the day.
I remember my brother and I intentionally sitting down to watch it because things like the Guinness Book of World Records at the book fair, this was in the air.
Yeah.
And I know we saw The Elephant Man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when it premiered on HBO.
Yeah.
So what surprised me watching now was really how empathetic it was.
Yeah.
So it's about people who would have been called freaks back then, and a lot of them were in sideshows and taken advantage of. It's very sensitive to that and honoring the people.
Yes.
Rather than their situation.
Like each segment humanizes them, really. It's very, it is tasteful. I mean, yes, you could argue that I think it's not exploitive in the end.
No, I don't think so.
And it's surprisingly tastefully done, but also, and it has that kind of stark, like late 70s, early 80s aesthetic that you and I are, well aware of, and even
like In Search Of.
Yes, and like the opening, like the white text and the black background, like with just silence, it just kind of makes it seem like a little. It adds like something to it, and it's like some more seriousness, I guess, for lack of a better word. But it reminds me a lot of like a film strip or something, and kind of watching it now on YouTube, and in an old. But it is, again, it's kind of low budget. It's kind of like the use of like old stills and stuff. There's reenactments into it, but the use of old stills and like the really, I don't want to say somber, but maybe like sober, which is a very sober narration,
This is Richard Kiley. I don't quite know why he's dressed up as a magician.
Yes.
I guess he's supposed to be a Victorian man or a gentleman.
Yes. I mean that his costume and like it got kind of like a circus like backdrop. I mean that's like one sort of concession to like ballyhoo, and it, like kind of some circus music playing at the beginning. But it's still, even so, it's relatively low key. I really like it, and they kind of go through it, and like some examples like Robert Wadlow, the world's tallest man. Lori and I went to like a Ripley's Believe It or Not museum, and I got like a shot glass kind of about him, and they have kind of a thing with like a statue of him. But I remembered first reading about him in this, or first hearing about him in this, and yeah, that was an example. Like not all these have sad endings, but that was very sad. Just in one of the common themes, just him wanting to be like other people and just being physically unable to do that.
Yeah, and he was in his 20s when he died.
Yeah.
He was 9 feet something tall, right? 400 pounds or something.
Yeah.
Because of his height.
Right. Just like a thing you wouldn't think about, like his legs were failing him because his body just couldn't, his frame couldn't support like that much body or whatever.
He couldn't feel his extremities.
Yeah. That's something I never would even think about. You might just think, oh man, tall, he'd be awesome at basketball and stuff. But again, this kind of like humanized it and really just kind of like made you think of like, wow, there's actually like real consequences to this besides just being like seen as a freak, that's just like physically uncomfortable and ultimately fatal in a way. Yeah, but sad. There's like one line he says something like, even, because he to make money, he would go to like tour with like a circus or whatever. But he said, but he maintained a certain dignity, and they wanted him to wear a costume that would accentuate his, height or whatever. And he refused. He just wore like a business suit or whatever like that.
And he wanted to open a shoe store.
Yeah. And there was like a couple of stories of Siamese twins. Interesting contrast.
The ones who were actually from Siam, Ching and Eng.
Yeah.
That's a very positive story.
Yeah.
They got married and had all these kids.
Yeah, and they were accepted in like their community in North Carolina and were like, fixtures in their local community. And
yeah, they each married a sister. But then there are the Dalton sisters, one of them wanting to get married and no states would allow them. Mm-hmm. And they had some celebrity and they did a movie and somehow made people sad, and people didn't want to know that.
Now, that was a kind of an infamous exploitation movie, Chained for Life. And it's something that you wouldn't necessarily think of. But yes, because the movie was so like effective, it killed them as a touring act because people just thought of them as tragic figures and they weren't entertained, I guess, by seeing them perform live, which I wouldn't have even thought about that happening. But I guess that was what happened.
And they ended up in North Carolina, which is where Ching and Eng lived too. Yeah. And yet they weren't able to have the life that they had.
Right. Yeah, it's just like common theme there of just not being able to do things and through no fault of their own, and it's pretty touching. There's a real poignance to the whole thing, really. And I think that's one reason it I don't want to say disturbed me, but it sort of did, because I was real young when I was watching it, and it was just the fact that it was presented in this way and that it was so real. It just hit home with me more. I just the empathy stood out, and I wasn't like I was scared, but I just felt bad, and it was just kind of like the sadness of it, really hit me.
So they talk about John Merrick, the Elephant Man. A lot of people know that story. The worst one is a woman.
Oh yeah, Julia Pastrana. Who's,
She had that, they don't really talk about, she had that infliction that other people have, where it's that werewolf thing.
Yes.
She could sing operatically, and her manager, in order to prevent her from going to someone else, married her, and they had a baby, and she and the baby died.
Yeah, the baby died, and then she died reportedly of a broken heart, like a couple days later.
Which that sat a knife, and then he mummified them.
Yes.
And took them around for decades.
Oh.
Other people toured them, and he went insane, and he ended up in an asylum and died there. Good riddance. But up into the 70s, they were touring.
Yeah, it's amazing. Now, that segment is one example of how it's not a perfect movie, and there's a lot of stuff that there's a few mistakes. Like one thing that stood out to me, because I just watched it, was the Wolfman movie. They sort of imply, if not outright say, that they quote the speech that was particularly made for the rhyme or the poem about when the moon is bright and everything. That was created just for that Wolfman movie. It wasn't like that wasn't part of mythical lore going back to Europe in the centuries. That was a Hollywood creation. So I'm sure there's some other a few errors in there, but overall it seems like they told these stories in relatively short segments and did it very well. And it was directed by somebody named Greg Stanton. And I looked him up. This is his only credit on IMDb. That was one thing I was curious about. I'd never thought of until now, was what else did this guy do? Nothing of credit that I know of. So it's interesting. I don't know. I'd like to know more about the background of this, but when you kind of look it up, you just see people describing it as ultra rare stuff, and it is, but I don't know who commissioned it or what led to this. Again, there's probably an interesting story involved there that maybe might be lost to the ages.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about it, but HBO is kind of famous for documentaries too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and now it's more of a big thing. They're involved. They fund it. They create it. Whereas this is probably something that was maybe just sold to them, made independently and sold to them. And kind of the other thing is it's 38 minutes or something random like that. So again, this is something that it's not loaded with nudity and violence. It's not R-rated. But because the subject matter and because of the unusual running time, it's something that probably was much more suited for HBO rather than, broadcast television at the time. And I don't know even if HBO had any influence on it. Maybe it was just fully made before they sold to them. It's hard to say.
Maybe it was a Time Life product of some kind.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, and again, because of that sort of starkness of it, there's not a whole lot of information within the credits and everything. Oh, and one thing, there are reenactments in it, which I think are relatively well done, and they sort of end on a note with
At first it was hard to tell.
Yeah, I think it's more stylistic. It seemed like they go from black and white to color, and the black and white segments are usually. But there's a couple of things where I'm still not sure if they used audio or something. But they have a segment at the end, they have the skeleton man and one of a heavy woman from the circus they married, and they just have a sequence of them, a reenactment of them dancing is I think Beautiful Dreamer plays in the background. That's kind of how they end the movie, and it's this is well done.
Glad you found it.
Yeah, as soon as I found that, I was like, whoa, and memories came coming back. So I must have seen parts of that a bunch of times as a kid, and then years ago I rediscovered on YouTube and then watched it again for the podcast here, and yeah, it holds up. It's well worth a look.
And then lots of promos and things.
Yeah, I love watching the old promos, and I like the jingles and the slogans, and I think it's always kind of interesting how they market themselves. And I think I think there's some stuff, and I might tinker with the playlist a little bit, but some of the early days, again, kind of like they really get more energized and kind of louder, and because you remember when they start doing the best time on TV is HBO. You get into like the later 80s and stuff like that, and like just be like more like party vibe and stuff like that, and kind of like be more loud and assertive, I guess.
And then the 20th anniversary special, which is outside of our timeline, but covers a lot of the same things.
Yes, aired in like 92, but features a lot of programming from the 70s and 80s.
Including a lot of those same comedians.
Yeah.
Different jokes.
Right.
A lot of comedy, in fact, hosted by various comedians. A lot of clips of comedy. And of course, this version has a lot of music cut out. Bette Midler shows up. It feels a little old-fashioned to me. Maybe because it was written by Bruce Valanche.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it premiered on CBS, and it's kind of weird, isn't it? Of all the networks, to put a thing celebrating HBO, CBS would seem to be number 3.
I don't know why any of them would air that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's an advertisement for HBO.
It is. It totally is, yeah. Like if it was a big concert with like a bunch of musical acts like doing once-in-a-lifetime performances, that'd be one thing. Okay, it'd be worth it. But no, yeah, this is mostly a celebrational and a promotional vehicle.
The only musical performance is Bette Midler.
Yeah.
I don't know if that song was for that special, but it plays over the credits too.
And it's in that kind of weird transition period. So you've got like comic relief, and they're clearly proud of their comedy here. But you're just before you get into like the 90s when you get into Larry Sanders, Sopranos, and is all coming in a little bit. But this is...
Yeah, Larry Sanders is on it already because they showed clips from that with Gary Shandling.
And they seem to be moving... I mean... They seem to be moving away from like emphasizing the movies and trying to be less reliant on that and focusing more on the events in the original programming.
In the original programming, no mention of Dream On. There's one clip in the end credits.
I think the uploader specifically says that he had to cut that out for copyright, and he gave a shout out to Brian Benben. So I think originally there was, yeah. Brian Benben. Maybe they had Brian Benben actually introduce the show, talk about it. So, but yeah, that had to be.
Future Mike out. And there was like a clip from a Michael McKean show?
Oh, yeah, like the therapy sessions.
Well, I don't remember that either, but I laughed.
Yeah.
Not safe for podcast, maybe, but...
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those shows, and especially like in the 70s and 80s, there's probably not a lot notable that we didn't mention as far as original programming, but once you get into the 90s, stuff starts creeping in, like you look back and like, I don't remember that.
Right. Yeah, but it's kind of a fun little thing to watch.
Yeah, so I think it's not what it was, but I enjoy those early years, and even if they were showing the same thing over and over again, you didn't have on-demand capabilities. You were really relying on what they were feeding you, but it was a nice option to have, and it did feel special in many ways.
There was in one of those clips was just sort of like a promo viewer mail thing where someone asked, "Why do you show old things?" They had some. Well, we see what people like the most and write into the most, and we like to repeat them if people like them.
Yes. Viewer demand.
That's a funny question. Why do you show old stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It's good that they addressed it. Now, I kind of hope that HBO, lives on and maintains kind of its form, because as much as I like the charm of the early days, now to me, I do think of it as a prestige product.
Yeah.
And I'd prefer it to stay that way, but it's nice to look back at the days when it was kind of its own thing, and really, it was a different HBO. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy that. I enjoy looking back at, and especially some of these lesser known original programming on there.
But as we've said before, our podcast will always be free.
It will? No, yes, of course it will. Yes. Well, we're giving you a premium product for free.
That's right.
I mean, that's something right there.
Uh-huh.
One thing we do, I guess, is we like to surprise people each week with what we have.
That's right.
So you don't necessarily know what's coming.
No, we don't offer a program guide.
We don't know. But every week is kind of like a Christmas Eve showing of Ghostbusters. Because you don't never know. It's going to be something cool, And,
right. Or it might be the Gold Watch.
The girl with Gold Watch and everything.
Yeah.
That may be the most negative I've ever heard you about anything on the podcast.
You were the one who said it was the worst thing we've ever talked about.
Well, me, I've been negative. Well,
yeah.
Well, collectively, I think that's near the bottom as far as like if we were to to each ranks stuff, and
Yeah.
that was not so good. But
But the top 10, the top 10 of the bottom 10, whatever. Most of them will probably be TV movies.
I think you're right. Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
That's an aside.
Yes. Well, yes. We hope you enjoyed this look at the early days of home box office, and if you like this, and if you'd like us to look at other networks, and this is kind of a departure, not being about one specific show, but if you like this kind of thing, let us know.
Yeah.
We're always open to suggestions.
The more off, we've done TBS and we've done HBO. I don't know what would be next, but something.
I've got a few ideas, but we'll save it.
Yeah. WPIX, was that one of them? Okay, we'll talk to you again. Whatever surprise is next week.
I don't think I actually know. I'm going to be surprised when when I look at it in a few minutes. This episode, commercial free, is part of your cable subscription package. Coming up next, not necessarily the news, followed by an encore presentation of Battle Beyond the Stars. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Battle of the Network Shows.